We're gonna talk about Hawaii versus California. It's gonna jump right into like this neighborhood is kind of like this neighborhood in California. Stay tuned till the end and we'll get into a little bit of comparison of like overall culture, politics. I'll walk that fine line. Let's start with Hawaii Kai. There's a marina, there's tall condo buildings, there's beautiful oceans, there's a bay or a lock, port lock, places to jump off rocks, kiteboarding, paddleboarding. Hawaii Kai is a certain thing. And when I think of California versus Hawaii, I think of Marin, Sausalito area in Northern California. You can paddleboard in the bay and the locks and stuff. In Southern California, I might be thinking Newport Beach-ish, maybe La Jolla-ish, maybe even Dana Point to an extent. And then in Northern California too, although Palo Alto and Atherton is not on the ocean, Hawaii Kai has a little bit of a Palo Alto sort of vibe to it as well. Average cost of homes, average price point, what it takes to be in that price point on average. The Marin, Sausalito, La Jolla, Dana Point, Palo Alto, Newport Beach, like it's that on Oahu. Close to Hawaii Kai, Kahala. I would consider Kahala a lot of the same as Hawaii Kai. So I'm thinking La Jolla, Newport Beach, Palo Alto, all of that same stuff. But if you've ever been to San Francisco, think of the Presidio. Think of this hilly area that's of a certain scale right in the city or right next to the city. The Presidio in the city in San Francisco is kind of like Kahala here on the island of Oahu. KAKA'AKO. We did our video on KAKA'AKO. We showed you how young and hip and trendy, avocado toast and fair trade coffee and all that stuff. Really cool places to eat. We ate at Moku Kitchen with a YouTube client recently in KAKA'AKO. What's up, Brandy? Well, I'm thinking KAKA'AKO versus cities in California. Thinking maybe in San Francisco, the Embarcadero or Soma, South of Market kind of area. Newer, more modern condos with amenities, and you can walk to a bunch of great restaurants, etc. Ward Village, places like that would also be lumped into this KAKA'AKO comparison. And like downtown San Diego, what would be a place in LA? I guess downtown LA, close to UCLA hospital. Those places would be like KAKA'AKO here in Hawaii. The new, trendy, cool part of Honolulu with all the newer condos. What about NUUANU? So NUUANU here on the island of Oahu is this valley, this mountain that's tucked back right overlooking the city, but it's not in this. It's not in Honolulu. It's what we call it town. We don't really say the city here. But if we did say the city, NUUANU is this mountain, this valley right overlooking the city of Honolulu. So I think of the Oakland Hills, maybe even the Berkeley Hills. Oakland Hills, Berkeley Hills, that's NUUANU. Kalihi Valley would be more like Hayward Hills, I would say. We just did our Kalihi video, so you could reference that. I'd say maybe a little more Hayward, Union City in the Bay Area. Let's talk about Manoa. Manoa is another valley, really close to town. It is town, but it's not the city of Honolulu for us. And the best thing I could think of for Manoa would be Berkeley. Berkeley's a college town, a certain type of homes and real estate and culture up in the Berkeley Hills. And then you go down into the city area of Berkeley around the campus and all the coffee shops and just the different vibes and feels. So Manoa and Berkeley, that's the best comparison. We're gonna keep it going from town in Honolulu and we're gonna keep it going west. So let's talk about the Diamond Head, Waialae, Kaimuki area. We did a video on that as well, so we'll put that in the show notes. So Bay Area reference. These are my strongest references because I lived in the Bay forever. Bay Area reference, I would consider it kind of like the Sunset, that region of the city. Or maybe if you're in Oakland, like Temescal, maybe Telegraph-ish on Waialae. Walkability, non-incorporated coffee shops, non-incorporated restaurants. Restaurants and places that have been there for decades, along with like newer, more modern, like younger spots too. Let's talk about Kalihi. So if you've ever been to the Bay Area, right when you come out of the tunnel in Alameda, you're in Jack London. The Kalihi's not Jack London, but if you go this way a little bit, you're in West Oakland. When I think Kalihi, I'm definitely thinking parts of West Oakland. You have all this industry, like the ships are right there of the Port of Oakland, container ships, Matson, all of that. Scrap metal. I used to be in the Coast Guard in that area, right? So the scrap metal facility, and in the Bay Area, they had this like forge place where they blow glass and a bunch of warehouses, and then it transitions into homes that are of the city area, right? Maybe even parts of East Oakland. So if you come out of Alameda over Park Street in the Bay Area, you have that part of like East Oakland around High Street and Fruitvale where there's a bunch of industrial stuff as well along the railroad track. Tacos El Gordo and National City, right? And that whole area, that might be like Kalihi for us. In LA, the fashion district where there's a bunch of warehouses that print shirts and make clothes and stuff like that. And then it's a little different in the valley. Check out our Kalihi video for a more in-depth, nuanced breakdown of that area. Salt Lake is like you go past Kalihi and then Moanalua, Salt Lake heading west is the next area. In terms of real estate and the way our real estate like MLS references the area, it's still part of the metro district. But you're starting to kind of feel like you're not metro. The best comparison I have, because I lived in the Bay again, would be like South City. So when you're coming out of San Francisco, people that are from South City consider themselves like different than the city. Like South City and the city is different. People who are from Salt Lake, they don't necessarily say like they're from town. The way like the realtors see the geography, like it's metro, right? So South City in the Bay. In San Diego, I'm thinking maybe like Mira Mesa. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. If you know these areas. For LA, maybe like Orange or Anaheim or something. Anaheim's so associated with Disney, but other than the Disney part, maybe something like that. Like maybe going towards the outer parts of Long Beach where you're almost not near the beach in Long Beach or something like that. Let's talk AIEA Pro City. You're not quite to the true suburbs, but you're not in the city. It's not the same thing, but for the Bay Area, you might be called this like Burlingame, Redwood City, because Redwood City has a few different faces to it. AIEA Pro City, it's a hard one for California. El Cerrito, that's what I was thinking. Like maybe like El Cerrito. I want to say Richmond, but people know Richmond is not the same vibes. It's a hard one for me. Waipahu. So Waipahu and Kalihi a lot of times will get lumped into a similar sort of thing. West Oakland, East Oakland is not the same as Richmond, right? Or even East Palo Alto or East San Jose or whatever. If I had to draw a comparison between Waipahu and make it a different comparison, draw different analogies than I did for Kalihi, in Northern California, I would go Stockton. Kind of Stockton, it's not that country, maybe Richmond. Waipahu is like our Richmond, Stockton kind of area. There's nuances to every one of these zip codes and communities for sure. Let's talk about Ewa Beach and Kapolei. So Ewa Beach and Kapolei, geographically, they're just the same area. They're the same flat part of land. I always reference like Morgan Hill in the Bay Area, or in San Diego, I'd reference like Eastlake, where there weren't houses a couple of decades ago, and now there's a bunch of houses, newer shopping centers. So there's probably big malls in Eastlake in San Diego. In Ewa Beach, you have Kamakana, which is a big new mall. I did 2 Ewa Beach videos already, so check that out. This might not be fair, but in LA, I'm thinking like, you're gonna go way east of the 5. So not quite into the valley, but maybe, maybe going into like Corona, the Inland Empire would be kind of Ewa Beach for us. But the difference is we stay by the ocean, In the Bay Area, maybe even out to like Brentwood, Antioch kind of areas might be Ewa Beach. Potentially even like Dublin, Pleasanton, Livermore. You're further away from the city. People go over there to get more square footage. They'll deal with the commute to get the bigger house. Concord might be a fair comparison. I wouldn't say Walnut Creek, Danville, or if you're from the Bay, I think you're picking up what I'm putting down, right? And probably even if you're from San Diego, you know about Eastlake. I was excited about this video, so I hope you guys are enjoying it. Kapolei, I'm thinking Concord, Dublin in Northern California, and San Diego, Eastlake. Really mostly the same thing, but I'm gonna throw in like Irvine. Only because I heard or I read somewhere that Irvine was the first big master planned community. Irvine might be a better comparison for Mililani, actually, maybe we'll say that. But regardless, when I start to think about these more recently planned suburbs, like master planned communities, I have to throw Orange County in there, right? Let's pause on Makakilo. When you're looking on our website for real estate, we have a search function there. It'll reference Makakilo as Kapolei. Makakilo is the mountain above Kapolei. Makakilo has a little bit of a different vibe though than down the hill where Kapolei is, where you have the sprawling suburbs, and then you have the second city of the island, so City Hall and library and police station, all that stuff. And then you have a big shopping district with the Home Depots and Targets and theaters and Costco's and all of that stuff. So Kapolei is a little different. We already talked about Kapolei Ewa Beach, but Makakilo, if I had to throw a comparison in there, if you know about this, it's Castro Valley. Castro Valley is different than Hayward. In Northern California, it's different than the Oakland Hills and the Berkeley Hills. Like Castro Valley is its own sort of thing, and I think Makakilo would be the Castro Valley of our island. Let's talk about WAIANAE. Stockton would probably be a better comparison for WAIANAE. If you're a UFC fan, the Diaz brothers, I think they're pretty cool with Max Holloway. So the Diaz brothers are from the Stockton, Lodi area in Northern California. And Max is from WAIANAE. And I think they're, you know, they're buddies, friends, cool with each other. And Stockton, Modesto, Lodi. You know, there's farms out in WAIANAE. It's blue collar. People fight for what they have, you know. And then you, at the same time, you find the best people you could ever meet at the same time. They're hunting and fishing and barbecuing and drinking and have their football teams. And it may not vibe with some people. It feel like home, with like that home cooked food that you were forced to eat, you know, over there as well. So if I'm going Southern California, I'm gonna go, for WAIANAE, I'm gonna go Temecula, Bakersfield even. WAIANAE, maybe some of the most beautiful ocean in the world and coastline, but then it's not La Jolla, right? So maybe like Chula Vista or something like that. I talk about this stuff with clients, and when they're from California, they're like, oh, like our clients, Reggie and Angel, they're like, oh, this guy knows about Oakland and whatever. And it's very easy for them to feel comfortable about the information they're being given, because I'm like, would you live in Alameda? Like, no, I don't like Alameda. Well, then you probably wouldn't want to live here. Or would you live in Stockton? Yeah, I live in Stockton. Okay, then you might be down with this place or whatever. I'm really excited about this video, but I don't want to overstate. You know, Hawaii is its own thing. I just wanted to pause and say that. WAIANAE, it's hard to compare it to anything else. It's uniquely special. It's its own thing. Hawaii is its own thing, so take it with a grain of salt, but, you know, have fun with the rest of it. MILILANI, the suburb in the middle of the island. The schools and the sidewalks and the rec centers that you have to be a member to get into. You have to like own a home or rent a home in the zip code, and then you get the card to go swim in the pool. In San Diego, I think of like Carmel Valley Ranch or Ranchos Penasquitos. I considered moving to San Diego at one point, and I was trying to look for like, where is it kind of suburban? I can still go surf. It's close enough to like cool walkable stuff, but it's just more of a suburb to raise the family. Maybe or maybe not Poway. I don't know if I would call Poway KAPOLEI or MILILANI, but I feel like I would keep Poway in the MILILANI block of comparison. In LA, above, you know, Camp Pendleton into the LA and Orange County area, I think I have to go Irvine. There's probably some better comparisons to that one. So I'm gonna do my LA research and may even bring on a LA person to help with the LA specific video. In the Bay Area, I'm thinking San Ramon, Danville, Dublin, Pleasanton, maybe San Rafael. If you know Northern California, you get it. So Wahiawa, I'm thinking like Watsonville, Vallejo, in between Sacramento and the Bay. You know, Wahiawa used to be a plantation community. Similar way Vallejo is related to Napa Valley in terms of the blue collar work that it provides the Napa Valley industry. You know, check out our PCSing the Schofield video for some Wahiawa. Let's go up to the North Shore. So North Shore, I can break it into 2 or 3 different zones. So I'm gonna talk about HALEIWA, Waialua. When you first get to the North Shore from the H2, we did a North Shore video, so we'll link that one as well. I'm gonna go San Luis Obispo, San Clemente. There's a ton of surf industry, you know, companies like Hurley and O'Neill, they have like setups in San Clemente. The way that football season is like fall, you know, when you start seeing pumpkins, you start seeing 49ers, Cowboys, Pittsburgh Steelers flags coming out, you know. In the winter, our North Shore is the center of the surf world. So kind of San Clemente, kind of San Luis Obispo. So from LAIE, Kahuku area, the northeast tip of the island, to Kaneohe. So that whole stretch, I'm gonna go like Pescadero. Let's say the stretch between Pacifica in Northern California to Santa Cruz. So you have your Davenport, Bonnie Doon in the mountains there, in the Santa Cruz Mountains, Ben Lomond. When you get up to Half Moon Bay and then you go into Montara and these little communities, that's kind of what our northeast strip of the island is. It's one of the most beautiful drives. And when I lived in Northern California, that was my favorite zone, in between Half Moon Bay and Santa Cruz. It's like untouched. It's like a national park as far as I'm concerned. Kailua, I'm gonna say North San Diego County. It's not that much of a surf town, so where it's positioned on this island and the reefs and the beach and the sand, it's not, you know, Leucadia and Oceanside and Carlsbad in terms of that. Kailua has a little bit more of the San Diego vibe, like North San Diego County vibe, I think. We'll transition into a little bit of politics in a minute, but one of the differences too though is North San Diego can become more red than most of the state and most of these big cities in California. I wouldn't say Kailua does that as much, but it's a walkable, beachy kind of town, right? So if you know Northern California, Santa Cruz, you know Capitola, maybe Kailua is more similar to that. In LA, maybe I'll go like Seal Beach. Kaneohe, although it's windward side, and a lot of people look at Kailua and Kaneohe when they're looking to move in real estate and lifestyle. Kaneohe is somewhere wet, a little less going on in terms of all that walkability. If you have Windward Mall and you have regions that are, there's highways and shopping, but not like I live in my little cute cottage and then walk into the coffee shop is not so much in Kaneohe. At least you don't think of that first. You think of kind of an area there where the land is just higher value because of the beauty of the mountains and stuff. So someplace wet. I'm gonna go Oregon. You know what'd be a better one for Kaneohe? When you go north of Sausalito, communities that are still a pretty decent commute to the city. So if you live north, you live north of the Golden Gate Bridge, but you're not right on the bay that is Sausalito into like Novato, maybe Scotts Valley. Kaneohe is a hard one to compare to California. Help me out in the comments. I'm not saying I'm the expert on this, and I'm sure a lot of people are gonna have a lot of opinions on this video. So help me out in the comments. Let's talk a little bit about the differences in culture and politics a little bit, Hawaii versus California. Everything's polarized now, so politics and culture probably have more overlap than I like. So I've said it before, I'll say it again. Think about the political horseshoe. If you never heard about it, just think about this. You have a horseshoe, and in the middle is people who are politically more centered. If you're really far left or really far right, well, in a horseshoe, you end up being closer to each other than I think you realize. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. If you're far left or far right, we probably have some stuff that we agree on, and we probably have some stuff we disagree on. But in terms of Hawaii and California, California is interesting, right? Because it's like, it's red, there's ranches. It's not uncommon here to see a dead pig in the back of a truck with a big antenna that talks on the radio. Lifted truck with tires, some sort of flag flying in the back. And you see that in California too. For those of you who've never been to California, and if you're still with me on this video, California is not all super blue and super like, it can be extremely conservative in areas. In terms of the space, California is probably more red. And population density, of course, we know it's really blue. And Hawaii is sort of paradoxical, but not in the exact same way. I wouldn't say California is paradoxical. They're just like very clearly divided, right? Like we're over here and you're over here, at least in my experience living there. In Hawaii, I think people are fiscally, I don't want to say liberal, but they, you know, fiscally blue. And so I think people, because of the higher poverty rate, the wage disparity and stuff, people tend to not trust or favor. And also probably some of the history. People tend to not trust and favor capitalism as much. So we tend to vote blue in that sense. But then those same people can be culturally a little bit conservative, and maybe in terms of their religious views, generational tendencies. You know, there's a lot of kupuna, older people in Hawaii, who have maybe a more traditional household where the male and female roles are a little more traditional. I'm really walking a fine line here. We're kind of really blue in the way we vote, but then I think we're more red. We have more conservative values than you would think. Okay, so what Ken asked was like, could I touch on the indigenous population and reservations, me versus Hawaiian homestead lands in Hawaii? And that's an interesting one. We'll throw that in. I'm not the expert on this, so first of all, let's state that, especially on the California, you know, indigenous Native American side. But in California, and in the U.S., the Southwest, the West, and then across the country in general, there's like reservations, right? Hawaii doesn't have that. So when you go to Papakolea or Waimanalo or KAPOLEI, Nanakuli, it's not like a sovereign area. It's more just sort of government subsidized housing. Like, so Hawaiian homestead here, Hawaiian homestead or Hawaiian homeland, the homes you see, some of them are very obviously like a different thing. You go to Kapolei and it just like looks like the newer suburb. Here, it's basically like a leasehold land. We can make a whole video on fee simple versus leasehold, but basically it's a piece of land where there's a cheaper home that I believe is government subsidized for it to be Hawaiian homeland, but then you don't own the land. The land is on a 99-year lease for $1, which is what makes the home less expensive. But I don't like it because it doesn't build wealth for that Hawaiian family. I want to see these Hawaiian families build generational wealth. It's different, right? Like if someone were gonna buy a $500,000 Hawaiian home versus an $800,000 home a few blocks away. If they can afford it, I would seriously sit down, run the numbers with them, and challenge them to buy the traditional fee simple home, because it's going to appreciate over time. The homes in the economy appreciate, or maybe inflating right now, but either way they go up in value, whereas the Hawaiian homelands, homes don't tend to do that. In California, it's more of a reservation thing that I don't understand. So I keep it at that. Hawaii and California are both like very blue and very red, depending. They both tend to vote blue all the time, but then you'd be surprised at how red they could be in slightly different ways. But I think it's something important to note. And I like it. I'll close this video with saying like that. I like that. Honestly, in the Bay, when I was living in the Bay Area, by the time I left, it was just like too one-sided for me. I enjoy that about California and Hawaii both. That there's a mix of competing values. And me with my diverse background, you know, half redneck from my mom's side and Hawaiian beach boy from my dad's side. So I tend to gravitate towards the nuance anyways. In fact, I used to own a t-shirt company. I used to own a jiu-jitsu company, Brazilian jiu-jitsu lifestyle brand. Think of like Quicksilver or, you know, Ruka or Nike. Like, I'm not on any of their levels, but we did sell out to a bigger company. I'll get a shirt, hold on. I made this shirt back in the day. It's wrinkled because I tend to not dry my stuff, but the California bear, and then the Hawaiian kahili representing Hawaii, so California and Hawaii. I did sign a non-disclosure, and so I'll keep it at that. I'm no longer the owner of this company, but California and Hawaii are dear to me, right? So many amazing things about California that we miss. But if you're thinking about moving, I get it. I was over the traffic. I know I would have been over the 405 and the 5 and all of those Southern California freeways, but I was over the 880, you know, the Bay Bridge and Dumbarton Bridge and San Mateo Bridge and all. Just when I got to the Bay Area in 2007, it was like December 22nd of 2007. I wasn't as techie, which is nothing wrong with it being techie, but it was something a little different. You could actually not have traffic on the 880. By the time I left Northern California or the Bay, it would be midnight and there'd just be hundreds and hundreds of cars on the freeway. It's crazy. People flipping each other off. And California, it's normal to just come up to a stoplight. I always talk about driving etiquette because it's representative of culture for me. People just cut you off and then honk and flip each other off. Like, you couldn't do that in Hawaii. Like, someone's gonna fight you. There's just a natural level of respect. It's not that we're cooler and tougher, but you just don't act like that here. I wanted to raise my kids here. Auntie and uncle, kiss on the cheek, especially before COVID. What Hawaii has that California has a hard time maintaining, a few little exceptions. Hawaii is a big city with a small town feel, at least Oahu, right? We'll make some other videos about all the other islands and draw some other comparisons later. We keep a small town vibe with a level of like small town respect. I just don't think California does it as well. So it was time for me to come home. I like being out in the neighborhoods and just showing you guys around. But we're gonna do a little bit more of this informational stuff because we just wanna pack you guys with information. Thank you for watching. Drop a comment, like, subscribe, and we're gonna put all those videos, links to other videos down below, and right here.